Dr. Robert Massey is Deputy Executive Director of the Royal Astronomical Society, and he joins us now. Dr. Massey, welcome. They're always immensely popular events, aren't they, with people, amateur astronomers as well as professionals. But let's start with the basics then. This is an annular solar eclipse. What does that mean?
Yeah, so solar eclipses happen when the Earth, Moon, and Sun are precisely or almost precisely in line. What you have to imagine is that the Moon's orbit around the Earth is tilted with respect to the Earth's orbit around the Sun. And so what that means is only when they line up in 3 dimensions do you get an eclipse, because most months what will happen is that the Moon will go a bit above or a bit below the Sun as it moves in front of it, so you don't get an eclipse. But, every so often, a couple of times a year, somewhere in the world, you'll get an eclipse. That's when all three bodies are lined up. Now, there are different sorts even within that, one of which is a total solar eclipse, which is the most dramatic of all. And that happens when the moon is close enough to the Earth to completely block out the disk of the sun. I should stress that there's an incredible celestial coincidence here, which is that the moon is about 400 times smaller than the sun. And it also happens to be 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun. And so that means that they appear to be almost exactly the same size in the sky. Now, as in everything in astronomy, and indeed in the whole of the natural world, you talk about circles and perfection and all that. And of course, it never is quite like that. And so the orbit of the moon around the Earth sometimes brings it closer to the Earth, and sometimes it's further away. It's an ellipse shape. So, sometimes you get it's close to the Earth at full moon, and we get all the stuff about supermoons. Sometimes it's further away, and you get sometimes, I'm not sure I particularly like the term, but a mini moon. And the same applies with eclipses as well. So sometimes in a total solar eclipse, the moon is completely blocking out the sun, and we get the beautiful outer atmosphere, the corona. But other times, like the annular eclipse today, the moon is further away and too small to cover the whole of the bright solar disk, what astronomers call the photosphere, because that's where most of the light is coming from. And so instead of seeing that ring of the outer atmosphere of the sun, what you see is a bright ring of sunlight. Actually, a dangerously bright ring. You can't look at this without eclipse glasses or filters. It's really much too bright to do that. It'll damage your eyes. But it's called an annular solar eclipse because that's an annulus, and so hence the name. So they're as rare as total solar eclipses. It's just they're a different kind of phenomenon.
So it's known as the Ring of Fire, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, the ring of fire is really, I think, best experienced when it's low down. So again, I stress you shouldn't be staring at the sun, but everybody knows obviously that a sun on the horizon is a red color. And that's because it's scattered the Earth's atmosphere. The light is going through much more of the Earth's atmosphere from your perspective. And so you get the red stuff left. The blue light is scattered in the atmosphere, and the red dominates. So if you imagine that red sun only with a huge hole in the middle, and just a ring left, and then that's where the ring of fire, I think, comes from. If it's higher up, it'll still very much have that ring shape. It's just that it's really lethally bright to look at. I mean, you really don't want to stare at this one way or another, actually, even when it's low down, because it will damage your eyes. So the observers out there in the Pacific and the South Atlantic and so on who are looking at this in South America will, I hope anyway, be wearing eclipse glasses to see it safely, or projecting it, or using some other equipment to watch it.
You've said several times now how important it is not to look directly at it. I mean, normal sunglasses, are they any good?
Do not look at a solar eclipse in normal sunglasses. They're really not good enough. The reason is that you're talking about a very, very intense light, and it's enough to damage your eyes. The problem is that with a normal sun, I think most of us have the instinct you can't stare at it. It's simply too bright. Your eyes will screw up. You'll look away. You're not going to be able to look at it for any length of time. The problem with a solar eclipse is that so much of the disk is covered that what's left is just a bright ring, and it doesn't trigger the same reaction in your eyes, but the intensity of that ring is much the same. So even in the last total solar eclipse in the UK in 1999, a lot of people saw a crescent sun in different parts of the UK, and I think there were not many, but a few cases of people doing permanent damage to their eyes as a result, where they looked at it without the right kind of filters, the right kind of glasses. The only thing you can really use is to look at it with the naked eye is eclipse glasses, or the only really mass market thing that's available. So, if you're going to go and watch an eclipse, then do invest in those beforehand. There are plenty of online suppliers you can get them from. There are some astronomy suppliers in the UK too, for example. People do things like use a specific welder's glass, I think number 14, that kind of thing. But you need to know what you're doing. You need to check this out in advance. And what is absolutely not safe is a pair of sunglasses or, say, an old DVD or CD. Those kind of things are really not safe filters. Even though they might give you that appearance, they're not. There are also things like the filters you put over the end of astronomical telescopes, which meet the same safety standards, and they're okay. But you'll know if you have something like that. What I would say is just don't improvise. Certainly not risking your eyes. There are other techniques you can use, like projecting it through a small telescope onto a bit of card or a pair of binoculars. That will work as well. But obviously, once again, you look these things up in advance. The advice really is to prepare for it as well, because it's fairly brief. I mean, the middle of the eclipse is only a few minutes typically, so you really need to be prepared for that moment, and it's best not to be struggling around as it happens.